the hardest thing I've had to deal with is learning that the illness I have, which is mental health illnesses and whatnot, are kind of like a chronic illness. You know, I think like if I were to have diabetes or something, and I'm trying to adjust to that, it's a part of my life and I'm going to have to live with it, while also being like, it's okay that I have it and I'm not like a victim of it. I feel like that's kind of the big thing. So I have OCD, generalised anxiety disorder, and a phobia of being sick and throwing up, and a phobia of sort of like commitment, intimacy, relationships, which is my current issue that I'm working on, especially as I'm coming into my 20s and seeing people, amazing couples around me going, I want this, but when I'm in it, I'm like, I don't want this. So that's what I'm currently struggling with. But I think probably going back to the original question of what was the hardest thing besides dealing with anxiety and things, was when I realised that I had a problem. So I always thought it was normal, especially because it kind of stemmed from my fear of being sick and throwing up and things. I always thought it was normal to get super, super nervous going out to dinner, because that's where it kind of manifested, and having to clean my hands 5 times a day when I'm about to eat or stuff like that. I just thought it was what everyone else did, and it wasn't until I was reading a video, I was googling what it is and all that sort of stuff, and I realised that it was probably a fear of being sick. So I was like, light bulb moment, that's what it is. Because I was just going through, you know, when you go through the symptoms and you're like, yes.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah. And then it was from there, like, moving on and telling my parents that I think I have an issue that I'd like to address. And this all came about when I was like, I want to say like 14, 15. And that was definitely not my first time with dealing with mental illness. I remember, I don't know how old I was trying to think about it before. I would have been in my first house that I was like born in, which we moved out of when I was 7. And I remember lying in bed and not being able to catch my breath. And it's the like, I was really young and I don't know why I would have been anxious when I was young, but it's the like hitting a brick wall when you breathe. So you breathe in and you can't get the last breath. And that's when I was like, that's not normal. And it wasn't until I was in high school that it started coming up every day and every minute when I couldn't catch my breath and not knowing what it was. And then it wasn't until I was connecting the dots, because I would get so anxious going to like a restaurant, that I was like, okay, so going back to like the symptoms, not being able to breathe and all that sort of stuff. And then my mum was able to like be like, okay, that's cool, we'll go and take you to a therapist. So I'm very lucky that I was able to get therapy and was diagnosed, and that's when I was diagnosed with all the things, except for the last thing, which is a very new one. And I think recently the hardest thing is trying to learn that, going back again to like the illness being my illness and a chronic illness and things, when at university, when you are feeling so bad and you don't want to do anything because you're just in like a bad space, and everyone's like, I'm getting A's and B, and like, you know, getting all these great results, and then you have to think, you can't look at them and be like, I want the A's and the A pluses because I'm not able to get there, so I need to stop looking at other people, especially when you go, okay, well they haven't got a job and a family to help look after, and illnesses and all this sort of stuff that you're dealing with.
With, because I know we touched on it with Nicole, she also struggled with OCD. What, for you, what is what comes up most often for you around that? Like, what's the main, you know, area?
Like ritual, yeah.
Yeah.
My ritual started with washing my hands, and I had to do it like 3 times, or I would not be happy. I'd be like, no, I can't stop until I've done it 3 times. And I feel like 3 and 5 are like my magic numbers, so it usually comes in 3s and 5s. And now it's kind of evolved into cleaning is a big one as well. So like the other night I was feeling anxious, so I was like, you know what's a great idea at 11 o'clock? I'm going to do the dishes again, you know, it's stuff like that. It's like, and sometimes I find the easiest thing is just to surrender to the ritual at that time and just be like, okay, I'm just going to do it because I know it'll make me feel better, even though I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. But fighting the anxiety also isn't great sometimes when it becomes too much. And then also studying is a big ritual for me at the moment. I have to studying is a way of not thinking about it, but this past holidays, it's been too much where I can't study, and so it's that sort of, now I'm trying to work with that dynamic of being able to being like, okay, I'm really overwhelmed with what I have to do at the moment, but I can't fix the problem because I'm worrying about it. Yeah, it's really weird. So
are there certain things that you find that really help you, that calm you down, or distraction techniques like the studying and everything like that? Are there specific things you're like, this is definitely what works, and you go back to it every time and it really helps? Yeah, I think probably listening to music, and one thing I really like is putting on, I have fairy lights in my room, and turning off all the lights, putting the fairy lights on, listening to music, and just trying to breathe, because that's the big thing with anxiety, is often you don't breathe normally. So it's trying to go back to that place and try and centre yourself. But I feel like, and I've been talking to my therapist recently about this, that I need to catch the moments before I start getting anxious, because once I'm in that spiral, it's like, that's it, and then there's no way of getting back, sort of thing. So it's trying to realise that, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now, I need to just be with me. Being mindful, kind of. Yeah. Mindfulness and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. What do you think is the biggest misconception with either OCD or anxiety or any of those kind of things? What do you think the biggest misconception of people is? I think definitely for OCD, it's being a perfectionist. So there are two categories. So you're either a perfectionist and you like everything organised, which is definitely a part of OCD, but people are too quick to be like, oh, that's OCD. And it's like, it's not. And then the other side is that you have to organise things constantly, when it's not necessarily, doesn't manifest necessarily like that. I always thought before I was diagnosed that OCD was, you have to step 5 times and then you go back and then you turn the light switch off and on. But it's just an obsessive ritual pattern, the compulsion that you have to do it. And that's what people don't realise, is that just because you're a perfectionist doesn't mean that if I move the pillow, you're not going to think about it until you have to move it again. It's different things like that people don't realise. And it's hard to be like, oh, I have OCD, and then everyone's like, oh, I do too, and you're like, but do you? Do you though? Have you been diagnosed with it? Because it's not the greatest thing to have. Yeah. And that's what I found in high school. So quickly people would be like, oh my god, that's OCD, and you're like, don't make fun of it, because it's not like that. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing I've struck about the way society kind of views it. Yeah. Okay. So to wrap up, what would be the one thing that not necessarily just one thing, but what's something that what kind of advice would you give someone that maybe is just gotten diagnosed with these things and is probably finding it quite scary or anything like that? I think the biggest thing is try and find someone you can talk to, whether that is an online community you're able to go, oh my god, I had the worst day, and just vent about it. Luckily for me, my mother deals with anxiety as well, so I'm able to go to her and be like, I've been really anxious, don't know why, and we're able to break it down. And then my brother has OCD, so we're able to talk about it, so it's like a nice family thing that we all share. But I definitely think trying to find someone who you can talk to